Welcome to The Long Road. I'm your host, Chris Roberts. It's good to be back. I know over the past month between Christmas and New Year's, with them both being on Tuesdays, the TV station was shut down on Mondays. Ernie and the other people deserved a break. They've been hard working. They have a right to be with their family and stuff, and I hope they did enjoy it. Ernie said he enjoyed the time off. And so today's a new show. It's a new year. I'm hoping everyone is having a new year, having a good new year. And I hope everyone had a great Christmas and a great holiday season. And hopefully that 11 below temperature that we had the other day, that'd be the lowest of the winter season, and we're on our way towards spring. Going to talk about a few things today. And I'll just put it right up front. I'm angry, I'm disappointed. I am extremely disappointed with the people that we call our elected leaders. They've talked about the fiscal cliff, and to me, leaders don't create problems. Leaders anticipate problems, they prevent problems, and if they can't prevent them, they mitigate them and they correct them. To me, I have not seen a single leader in Washington who has been in a leadership role that anticipated a problem. The fiscal cliff was caused by the president and Congress. The fiscal cliff was something that was made up by the media to get people excited, to get people nervous, get people scared, and to make money. To me, the individuals that we have in Congress, I know I may tick off some of the firemen, they remind me of, every once in a while you hear a story about a fireman who's a hero, constantly going into burning houses to save the people inside. And we all have complete praise for the individual because he saved the people's lives. But in the end, we're disappointed, we're sad, because we found out that the fireman, our hero, the one who was saving us from disaster, was the one that was starting the fires. He was starting the fires just so he could look like a hero. He was putting people at risk, damaging property, so he could be a hero. And to me, a lot of the members in Congress, the president's office, the vice president, they created a fire so they could put out the fire. Well, if you create a fire to put out a fire to look like a hero, guess what? You still did a lot of damage because something burned. And when something burned, we all suffer. And we have. And it's amazing. Last week we saw the president saying, and president and vice president, Senator Reid, Nancy Pelosi's, Mr. Boehner saying, we solved the problem. We averted disaster. America has not gone over the cliff. We have solved the problem. Well, we heard this 18 months ago when we were talking about the deficit and the budget limit, the debt limit. When they go and say, we're going to raise the debt limit by $2 billion, and we're going to have this sequester because, and then within 18 months we'll come up with a problem. We'll be able to come up with a solution to our problem. We didn't come up to a solution to the problem. Plain and simple, they were worried about getting reelected. They were willing to tell us anything that we wanted to hear, but they had no desire to talk about the economy, the deficit, the debt. Everything was rosy. Everything that they wanted to tell us was good. Everything was getting good. The people on the business stations were saying, oh, it's getting good. The economy is ticking up. The economy is ticking up. Well, if I own a lot of stock and the stock market's going up, it's good. But there's also a possibility the reason the value of my stock is going up is because I cut your job. You went from full-time to part-time. You lost your retirement benefits. You lost your health care. So I get rid of 3 of you. my profits go up, the stock goes up. So the economy is looking good for me. And so, because one of the things we were looking at, for example, when we keep talking about the economies going up, between 2006 and 2012, retailers like JCPenney, Sears, Walmart, they got rid of over 1 million full-time employees in that 6-year period. And in turn, they replaced them with a little bit more than 500,000 part-time employees with no benefits. That's why profits go up. That's why the stock market goes up. That's why if I own stock, the economy is looking good. It may not be looking good for you, but if I own stock, it's looking good for me. And so when our elected leaders saying this is all about the economy, we're talking about we have to protect the American economy. We have to protect the middle class. We're doing it for you. As the old cliche goes, when a politician's saying he's doing something for you, you're in trouble. And so let's talk about this great deal that prevented the fiscal cliff. Well, did it really prevent the fiscal cliff? It didn't do anything about the sequester. It says, hey, you know what? Instead of having the possibility of paying back this money over 12 months, we're going to give you 2 months off. But come 2 months from now, there's still the same possibility you're going to have to pay the same amount of money back. But now you're only going to have 10 months to pay it back. That's not good for me. I don't think it's good for you. And, oh yeah, so we're going to raise taxes, but we're only going to go raise taxes for people that make $400,000. If you're single, $400,000, or if married, $450,000 per year. Okay, that doesn't fall into too many. Too many people don't fall into those categories. And so, yep, we're going to do it. We're going to save Americans from these tax increases. Well, let's talk about the fiscal cliff. So basically what's going to happen in the fiscal cliff, instead of what we're going to do, the big plan is we're going to reduce, quote unquote, basically we're going to increase spending this year alone by over $300 billion while cutting about $25 billion. So I have a really bad debt, I have a really bad cash flow, and I have to do something. So the perfect solution to prevent me from going into disaster is, you know what, plain and simple, for every $1 you cut out of your spending, go out and spend $12 more. So our deficit for this up 2013 will be about $300 billion more. And so what did we get out of the special cliff prevention? Well, here it is, looking out for the middle class. There was $76 billion in special tax breaks, special interest. The special interest groups were well taken care of. Political campaigners, campaign contributioners were well taken care of. Looking at different reports depending on who you are looking at, which ones you want to read. Between $46 to $78 million will be in for special tax breaks and tax incentives for owners of racetracks that have NASCAR racing. Excuse me. So they'll be able to deduct for bleachers, concession stands, track maintenance. And so the justification is these owners of these track races, they need these breaks so they can compete on a level playing field with places like Universal or Disney World or Old Dominion or these places. They're saying is we need these tax breaks so we can help lower the cost. So instead of mom and dad taking their kids to Disney World down in Florida, instead they'll stop at Talladega and watch a race. Okay. Well, NASCAR owners, best of my knowledge, is They're not poor people. Jimmy Johnson, I think, made $7 or $8 million last year in race winnings. And there was quite a few. I think the top 20 guys all made over $1 million. And that's not counting what they got from sponsors and other endorsements and stuff. And so I guess because they're going to have to pay a few percent extra on their money, then we, the American people, will turn around and reimburse it the back doorway by giving $46 to $78 million to these track owners. Another one, again, between $199 to $222 million worth of tax breaks for rum makers and rum producers in Puerto Rico and the United States Virgin Islands. What they're saying is that the rum makers in Puerto Rico and in the Virgin Islands can't compete against with rum makers around the world. So what's going to happen is we, the American taxpayer people, will have to come up with up to $222 million, or basically $13.50 a gallon per rum that we'll be paying to the rum makers in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. That money will go to those owners of those companies. I can guarantee you the reason they're making rum in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands is because they pay the people a heck of a lot less. So again, the economy's looking up for me if I own stock in the rum companies. Captain Morgan is sailing and smiling happy. That's a good reason why he has that pirate flag up there, because he's ripping us off for $222 million. Again, if you want a rum and Coke, you're paying extra for it. Captain Morgan's smiling. You want to go to the liquor store and buy some rum? $13.50 a gallon more. Just because we want to make sure Captain Morgan is happy. Another one, $38 million for tax breaks for companies doing business in American Samoa. American Samoa, one of our 6 territories. So hey, if I want to do business in American Samoa, the American government, or the taxpayers, will pay up to $38 million next year for me to do business in American Samoa. Again, companies are moving out to American Samoa because they have a lower labor cost, and there's ways that they can sell into America without having to worry about quotas and tariffs and all that other kind of stuff. Here's another one, courtesy of Senator Wyden, Democrat of Oregon. A 10% tax credit up to $2,500 for anyone who buys an electric car, scooter, or motorcycle. The president was really pushing really tough for us to buy the Volt car. I've seen one. It's about $45,000. Small car, not exciting. And I think instead of the thousands, it's only been in the hundreds. So what we're going to do is extend, hey, buy a Volt and get up to another $2,500 off as a tax credit. Here it is. We own General Motors. We're forcing General Motors to build the Volt. The American people don't want to buy the Volt, the electric car. And so what we'll do is we'll use your tax money to get someone who doesn't want to buy a car to buy it. So if I'm one of those, quote, the right people in DC because I want to look good, I can go out and buy a Volt and show everyone else that I'm buying a Volt, but then the federal government will give me $2,500 back to help subsidize that. But it just so happened was in Oregon, they're going to produce the electric scooter and the electric motorcycle and the electric bikes in Oregon. And so, as a way of going off the fiscal cliff, to prevent from going off the fiscal cliff, the senator from Oregon was able to slip this in, so which means that the companies in Oregon, basically there's up to $7 million in electrical tax credits for people to buy their products. Now you like your movies. You know, movies are getting more and more expensive. So here's the deal. If you decide to make your movie any place in the United States, we, the American tax people, will give you $15 million as a tax credit to make your movie into the United States. We don't want you to go to Romania. We don't want you to go to Canada. We don't want you to go Indonesia, the Philippines, because we're saying is we want those jobs to stay in America. Well, here's a funny thing. You ever go see Avatar? You see a lot of these 3D movies, Pixar? Most of those jobs are done in the United States because they're not real people. They're on the computer. So guess what? I can have people in Pixar doing the movie, and this is great. I can get $15 million back from the United States government per movie. Again, that helps us prevents us from going off the fiscal cliff. But if I go and do one of those movies, film the movie in a low income area, I'll bump up to $20 million off my movie. So in theory, looking at it, what does the $20 million come off of? What happens if I go into an old place and my movie only costs $25 million? Does that mean the federal government gives me $20 million so I only have to pay $5 million for the movie? Or if the movie is only $20 million, the federal government gives me $20 million, so the American taxpayers paid for that movie. The American taxpayers covered all my costs. So any money I make is pure profit right off the top for me. But again, that's a question later to be solved. Okay, $59 million. If you want to grow algae to help for biodiesel or biofuels, right now, next year, there's $59 million available in tax credits for you to keep growing algae. Here's an even better one to help American jobs. $9 billion in tax breaks to big banks or manufacturers for actively financing or allowing multinational companies to avoid paying U.S. taxes on foreign income and foreign taxes if profits were the result of actively financing a deal or activity on foreign soil. This is how General Electric gets away every year of not only paying no federal income tax, but getting back a tax return. So if I use GE Bank to finance me building a GE factory in China, so I can make, and I make $1 billion profit in China, under this provision, I don't have to pay taxes on it because GE Bank helped build the GE manufacturing company to build maybe green energy jobs, green energy product like the wind turbines in China. And then China turns around and sells them to us, okay? Because I used American money from an American bank to help build an American company to produce products in a foreign company, I get a tax credit. And there's $9 billion of that available for any U.S. company that wants to do that. And the reason for that, the justification is it will make American businesses much more competitive. Much more competitive. So if Boeing decides to says, we're no longer going to build fuselages in the United States because I will get Citicorp to finance building a factory in China, and I will use Chinese workers, pay Chinese workers, and build those fuselages in China, and then ship them to the United States to sell to American or Delta. All the profits that I make, or a large portion, I can write it off as a tax credit. That's as a result of the fiscal cliff. Another one, if I'm McDonald's or I'm JCPenney's, or I'm Walmart, Sears, $99, you name it, a restaurant or a retail store. There is $3.7 billion available in tax credits out there if I upgrade my facilities. So if I'm Margaritas and I want to upgrade my margaritas, I can go in and say, okay, I'm going to upgrade it, and the federal government will give me a tax credit for that. Justification is, well, they'll put local workers to work. Well, if it's a good business sense to increase the size of my restaurant, I would be making that decision based on the fact that I'd get return on investment and I would get more customers. I should not be making that decision based on the fact that the federal government would give me a tax credit. And so, but no, there it is, $3.7 billion for restaurants and retail spaces to improve their sites. Another one, $314 million for companies that donate food to the needy, banks, books to the public schools, or computers to the public libraries. Okay, doesn't say it has to be brand new food. Hey, plain and simple, I'm a big company. I've got 10,000 cases of staples, not staples, I'm talking staples like macaroni. The sell-by date is 4 or 5 weeks away. And I go, hey boss, why don't we donate that to the food bank, the local food bank, because we're not going to sell it anyway and probably going to have to give it away. If we donate it, hey, we'll get this big tax credit. There's $314 million out. We might be able to make more profit on those products by donating and taking the tax credit. Or, hey boss, we got all these books. You know what? We said this book was going to be really big seller. It wasn't a big seller. We got 10,000 copies and we don't want to go to the dollar store and sell them for $1 a piece. Why don't we donate them to public schools? Maybe we'll do a tax write-off based on the face value of $25. Hey, $314 million out there. Or donate computers to the public library. Hey boss, we got these old computers. We want to go from Windows 7 to Windows 8. Hey, let's donate these computers to the public library. What is the true value of these computers? Well, if I junk them, I'm going to have to pay such and such, but you know what? I can write them off at $200 each and send them to local libraries in these small towns, and they'll be more than happy. It'll make me look really good that I'm helping the public out, and I get a tax credit. Another one, $331 million to owners of railroads. We the taxpayers will now pay next year 50% of all your maintenance on your railroads. You need your tracks fixed, come and see us. The American taxpayer will cover 50% of what it costs to do it. I would love for the federal government to come and say, hey, Mr. Roberts, I'll pay 50% of all the maintenance on your vehicle for the next year. Oh, sorry, but I'm just an American taxpayer. The railroad companies are making profits, are going to be able to increase their profits because we, the American taxpayers, are going to go in and pay the maintenance. Another one, $12.2 billion for producers of wind, solar, and other renewable energy sources. Of that, $12.2 billion, green energy. But they also slipped into, if you mine coal on an Indian territory, Indian reservation, or Indian coal as they call it, the federal government will give you a $2 subsidy for every ton of coal you take out. So we're doing everything possible for private coal to prevent private coal from being mined. But in turn, if you're on a native Indian reservation, you can collect an extra $2 for every ton that you take out of an Indian reservation. To me, I know there's high sulfur coal, low sulfur coal. Some is dirty, some is clean, but I didn't know that Indian reservation coal was cleaner than non-Indian reservation coal. So when it comes to green energy, I guess depends where you live or who you vote for determines whether your coal is greener than someone else's coal. And when you look at the number of financial fiascos that we had over the past 2 years with solar companies, I don't know if we as American taxpayers should continue on funding some of these companies who have great promises but quickly go right into bankruptcy. Another one, $5 billion for automakers, utilities, and heavy equipment makers to write off large capital expenditures immediately. Normally you get to depreciate something down. If I'm a small business and I have a truck, I get to depreciate it over a period of time. But now, if I'm General Motors and I want to put a whole bunch of new stuff in, or Seabrook or any other big utility plant, or I'm Caterpillar and I want to do something, I can do it right now and get immediate depreciation and get major tax breaks. Again, $5 billion. Another one that just happened to slip in, Section 328. It extended tax-exempt financing to the Liberty Zone. The Liberty Zone is the area around the World Trade Center. And so what happened, we as the federal government, we as the people decided to make it tax-free for a while, tax-exempt, so we could help get it rebuilt. But it seems what happened was, basically, as a tax-exempt financing, well, basically they're building a lot of luxury apartments in that area. If you have millions for a small apartment, this is the place to go, into the Liberty Zone, because they're building them with tax-exempt bonds, tax-exempt financing. Again, so these builders are building multi-million-dollar luxury apartments without having to pay any taxes on the financing whatsoever as an incentive to rebuild the Liberty Zone or the World Trade Center. Well, I don't know about that. The other part, that's how they prevented, quote, us from going off the fiscal cliff. They had been promising us so much over the years, giving us what we want, telling us what we want to hear, but never billing us, but never collecting. And now they're afraid to come and say, hey, we have to pay for this stuff, because they're afraid if they tell us, we're not going to vote for them. So what they did was, let's go back the other way. Let's go after, quote, the wealthy people. And in the meantime, while we're spending so much time arguing over $250 or $450, the average worker got whacked big time. Tell a family of 66,000 living in Keene, living in a $200,000 house and basically going to pay about $7,000 in taxes in 2013. Or someone in a $150,000 house earning $50,000, paying $5,000 in taxes. Guess what? You can afford to give up another $1,300. You can afford to give up $1,000. Okay? That's what happened. And so that's the sad part. I will do this part quick and sloppy, because we like to talk about, here's a single, married, head of household. If you're at the 20% line, the single person is $8,294. The married person is $37,621. Head of household. The 40. So just think, 40% of the workers, single workers in the United States, make $15,000 a year. 40% of the head of household, which means you have to have a child, making $20,000 a year. That's 60% single. A lot of these single are college students, college graduates. Here you are, you go to college, you're deeply into debt, and a lot of them are working as bartenders, waitresses, I guess you have to use wait staff, hostess. A lot of them are working at Starbucks. There's an awful lot of college educated people at Starbucks who never thought they'd be working there. Even 60% of the head of households in the United States make less than $30,000. So here it is in the United States, just for some clarification for some of the number wonks are going back and forth. When you go through getting the numbers and stuff, and you go through the Bureau of Labor Statistics, you go through the census, you go through the IRS, and a number of, and they all have it, the methodology a little bit different. And I think on this one, these numbers are based on a family of 4. Okay, so the reason these numbers are so high, so if it's only 2.4 people in this group, then you extrapolate it up to get this 145,000. So in theory, if I and my wife were married and we had no children and we were making $90,000 a year, we would fall into the $180,000 category because of being extrapolated up to family of 4. That's one of the games they go. So when you go in, 80% of all single people in the United States makes $41,000, basically less than $42,000 a year. Head of households, 80% of the houses with children in, not unmarried houses with children in, make less than 44,000, basically 44,000. 90% of head of households, that's 63,000. So if a woman's married, college educated, got a good job, making $65,000 a year, she'd be making more than 90% of the people in the United States. A single person, 90% of the single people in the United States make less than $65,000 a year. Excuse me. That's the problem that Congress, these are important numbers because these are real numbers. There's the problem with Congress. Okay, look at how little that the Americans make. And it was 37% of all Americans, I want to have the thing, 37% of all Americans are worth less than $10,000. So basically, 1 out of every 3 Americans have less than $10,000 in assets. 50% of the American population has less than $57,000 in assets. That ain't a lot of money. People are not going to live very long on that amount of money. And so, because we have such low assets and we have such low incomes, plain and simple, that's one of the reasons the federal government is spending over $1 trillion extra every year by giving us stuff that, quote, we can't afford, but they don't want to go and tell us we can't afford. And so Congress is buying our votes every year for $1 trillion. Our incomes are not going up because we had the one in our income, in was it November of 2007, the median household income was $54,000. In April of 2012, it was less than $51,000. So in the last 5 years, our median household income is $3,000 less. And so when you look at taxes and you look at cost of food, you look at gas, you look at all this kind of stuff, the expenses are going up, our incomes are going down, and we're eating into our assets. So if this continues, here it is, 37. If we continue 5 years from now, it would not be unbelievable if 40 to 45% of the American people have less than $10,000 in assets. So this is why we're getting, quote unquote, to the fiscal cliff. This is why we're getting in trouble, is because the emperor has no clothes on, and no one wants to tell us because Congress is trying to convince us we're all emperors. And like I said, 80% of single people make $42,000 or less, and 80% of households with children, unmarried households with children, make $44,000 or less. That's a problem in anybody's book, and it's going to take political courage, it's going to take leadership, and it's going to take people who are willing to risk it all to get us back on the right road. Somehow I don't see that happening, but I hope it happens. We need to get it to happen, and we need to demand that our political leaders do the job. I don't want to be complicit in the destruction of our country. They need to get the job done. We need to force them. So I will see you out there on the long road. Hopefully they'll fix the road because it's getting awful bumpy. And have a good week.